everyone, I'm Yang, and today we're gonna learn how to draw eyes. We will never again have the problem of not drawing the other eye. No more. This is a two-part video. In the first part, we're gonna learn what parts make the eye, how does it work, and how to place it correctly inside the skull so we can make proper looking faces. So let's get started. We're gonna begin with learning a little bit more about what forms the eye. First, we have the white of the eye here, which is the sclera. It's called the white of the eye, but it's not really white. It's just one of the whiter parts of our body. But if you're gonna paint it, don't add just pure white on it. And then we have the iris, which is everything that has color in it. That was very ambiguous. I meant what we call the color of the eye, right? So I have brown eye. That's my iris. That's brown. So next we have the pupil. The pupil is the only part of the eyeball that actually changes size. The pupil can dilate or it can contract. When it's contract like this, like in this photo, it's because it has a lot of light going inside. That's what the pupil does. It contracts to reduce the amount of light that's going inside. And when it's dark, it has to dilate, so it will allow more light going inside. The pupil also dilates when we face certain situations. For example, when we're scared, arousal also causes dilation. So there are some emotions that will cause the pupil to dilate. Next, we have the lids, right? The upper lid, it's just a bunch of skin that extends and then closes the eye, or contracts and the eye is open. When it contracts, it needs some place to go, right? This crease here is going at the top of the eyeball. I don't know if that was easy to understand, but if you touch here, you're gonna see the crease is exactly between the eyeball and this bone here. It's just where the skin found space to be. So we have this, which is very movable, and the lower one that doesn't move as much. You can squint, but even if I open my eyes the most that I can, it won't open this as much. It will be mostly here and the eyebrows. So we gotta keep this in mind. The bottom lid doesn't move as much. And then we have the tear duct. Don't forget your tear duct if you're making kind of realistic eyes or really realistic eyes. Don't forget this, okay? So I couldn't handle all of the hair in my face, so we'll continue like this. So when we look at the side of the eye, it's important to notice that it's a sphere. Here you have the sphere. A little bit larger, maybe. But what really matters is, because it is a sphere, it has this sort of volume to it. You can't just make the side of the eye and something straight like this. It won't work. You have to add the volume of the sphere, and you have to consider how this sphere will affect everything else. We're gonna talk about the eyelid next, so don't worry about where to position it. I just really want you to keep in mind this is a sphere, okay? Let's go next. So next we're gonna learn about the eyeball, how it works, and everything related to it. It's the most important part, right, of the eye. It's what we usually just call the eye, it's just the eyeball. So here we have this simple eyeball that has, you can see here, the sclera, the iris, and the pupil. How do we position this, right? If you want to make the eye look into the side, how are we going to make it? So what we do, you take this sphere, which is the eyeball, and you add some coordinates, something that will help you determine where the iris and the pupil will go. When it's looking straight ahead, it's just a cross. In the middle of it, you add the pupil, and around it, the iris. But what if it's looking any other direction, right? Then I'm gonna have it like this. I'm gonna make it again, just so we can see. We have this cross here, right? And in the middle of it, we're gonna add the pupil. Here, and around it is the iris. Maybe a larger pupil. The pupil can get really small and also almost as large as the iris. So here you have an iris. This is a little too narrow. If you draw something and you realize, this isn't correct, just fix it. It's not that big of a deal. So let's fix it. I just really dislike how it looks. Let's take advantage of everything that we have with digital art. If you're doing this traditionally, you're just gonna have to keep erasing. It's okay. Yeah, a little better now. So here we have one. Let's go to the next one. Round pupil. It's actually too small. Let's make it larger. Yeah, better now. Fix some of it. We're not gonna actually draw these eyeballs, right, when we're making our eyes. This is just so we have an idea of what's going on inside, because we always need to understand everything's form and its three-dimensionality. That's the only way we can draw correctly. Okay, and now the last one. When I first did these lines, I had done it like going above right here, but then if you were in an actual skull, we would be looking inside of the brain. So I put it down here. It's important to foreshorten it a little bit when it's looking up, when it's looking down, or to the sides. It won't be a full circle all the time. There will be some foreshortening. That's why it's really important to keep in mind that this is a sphere, and as a sphere, when the iris moves along, it is gonna change the form also. Okay, let's keep this in mind. Don't forget it. Do you guys know about foreshortening? I just realized I didn't know if everyone knew. So we have this pen here, right? It's in its full size. And if I start tilting the length, look, it's smaller and smaller and smaller. The farther end from the camera gets smaller than the front, which gets larger. Yeah, that's foreshortening. And that applies here. Look, this part, which is closer to us, is larger than this part, which is further away from us. This here needs a little more foreshortening, so let's take care of it just a little bit. Okay, so this is how we place the iris and the pupil inside the eyeball, not inside, on top of the eyeball. And something that you might be wondering is, okay, but how do I know the size of the iris, right? Because the iris doesn't change size. So for example, we could do this pupil big like this. It would still be correct depending on the situation, right? But the iris could not be this big. That would be just weird. How do we know the size? So I'm gonna use our first model here to know the size. We find the middle and see the diameter, or is it the radius? Anyway, we see the distance between this middle and the edge of the eyeball when it's looking ahead, right? And about the middle, that's where the iris will be. How do we apply it when the eye is looking to the side or to the other? You just keep in mind the width. This would be about the front, right? This, and then half and half. There's not much you can do about when it's turning to one side or the other. You just gotta kind of learn the width of the iris. Yeah, it's something you get the hang of it with time. It's not that hard. Yeah, okay, so let's go to the next part. So now that we have the eyeball, how do we put the eyelid, right? Let's get to this place now. Here we have some photo references. One, we have the eye looking directly at the camera here, and the other one is a side profile. So let's first take a look at our references, because drawing anything from imagination can only work after you have studied a lot of references. Okay, here, right, we have the top lid. You can see that it has some volume. There's a thickness to the skin, right? So it has a volume. Here is the eye. The eyelid will go a little beyond the eye, so it can cover it. If it didn't go beyond, how could it cover the eye, right? So don't forget, like, you can't make the eyelid like this, then where's the skin? It has to go a little beyond. Also, this is wrong, but we're gonna talk about it later. So don't forget the volume of the eyelid, and let's analyze now the shape. If you're drawing a kind of a realistic eye, it's good to make an angle when drawing it. There is one upper angle here and a lower angle here. They're kind of opposite, they're diagonal like this. And so we're gonna add the same to our reference, covering a little bit of the iris, because we don't see all of the iris unless the person is like really surprised and then you can see it. But if they're just resting, looking for, I don't know, most of the times we can see the top part of the iris. So let's fix this now. Let's add here, and then the bottom part, you also can see like the white below it most of the time, right? And then this angle. So where do we place the eyelid now, right? Like where's the end, where's the beginning of it? So what we do is you have the pupil and about the same line, and some people will have it like above and some will have below the pupil. I'm just gonna follow the drawing I did here, but what matters is the eyelid will go as far as the eyeball here, and then the tear duct begins. On the outer side, it will go just to the border of the eyeball, because really the eyelid exists just to cover the eyeball, so it won't go beyond. When we see it on the side, you might think, well, if it's covering the eyeball, then it's gonna be from here on, but it's not how it works. What happens is there is a proportion to show how far the eyelid will reveal. That is, you have the iris and then about twice its width, that will be the eyelid. So here we have 1, 2, 3. So about here, same line as the pupil, you will have the eyelid. Something important to keep in mind is the volume of the eyelid. So when you're drawing it on the side, you can still see this little edge thingy that is showing the volume of the eyelid. And about where does it go? It will go here on the eyeball. It needs to find a place to rest. It's important to notice that because we have the top eyelid here going above the eye, it prevents all the light to come to this area here. So the top of the eye always has some shading, if the light is coming from above, right? Because then the light can't reach as much the top of the eye. So that's why when we make representations of the eye, like let's say I have this here, right? And then you will shade some of the top part of it. That's because the eyelid is covering, and then you can't let the light go in. So if it were here, we would add a little bit. Let's take a look at the reference so we can see really how it goes. Look, can you see here it's a little darker, and here as well. So oh yeah, and when it comes to this, how do you know what is the length? Like, how big is the eyeball really? Sometimes you just don't really know. I mean, you should know where the eyeball is because that's the most important structure, but I don't know, sometimes we just don't. So let's say you have the iris first. For some reason you decided to start with the iris. What do you do now? Where do we place the eyelid? Really easy. You have this width, and then again here, look. 1, 2, 1, 2. Here is where the eyelid will end. Okay, you can see this in the reference. Don't let go of your references, they are really important. Okay, so some things you should not do. The first thing, really important to notice, is don't make the eyelid go beyond the eyeball. That makes no sense. So don't make too large of an eye. The same goes especially here on the side. It just, ugh. Imagine if we could see all the way to the back. Actually, to begin with, that would be bone here, but I mean, don't make this end here. Really gotta find the right place. This volume here, and at the top of the eyelid will go above the eyeball, okay? Oh, also, this almond shape, it's not really appealing. It's not appealing. Of course, you can make, if you're making an anime eye, right? And it will be curving, but then you see, there's always some sort of angle. Even if you're making like this, there's this angle here, this angle here. You rarely ever do just this. Well, you can as well. You're not forbidden of anything. It's just most common to add an angle. And if you're trying to make it realistically, then please don't make it just these curves. They're kind of blah. So moving on. Next, how do we make the other eye? Oh, that's good. So first we're gonna add the head. it's gonna be hard for you to add the other eye correctly if they're just in space, if they don't have a place where they're gonna be. And in our head, it's gonna be inside the eye socket, which is a hole we have in the skull. So I made here some simplification, like some guidelines, just to find the head, the proportions, and where things are gonna be. We place the eyeball in the middle of this eye socket, but this is not really shaped the way our skull is. We all find our own ways of simplifying things. For me, this is the best way to simplify, is what I like the best. And then on top of it, I'll add all of the structure we talked about. Look, I'll take it here and then add the eyelids, the top of the eyelid, at the tear duct, right? And here how it looks. Adding some shading to the top of the iris because of the volume of the eyelid. And I just added some things to add the texture of the iris. And the eyebrow, that's not important right now. But okay, so let's talk about the eyebrow a little bit. So what you do to find the eyebrow is the eyebrow is placed on top of this bone here. We have a bone that goes here around the eye socket. And the eyebrow just goes around it here. You can make it like this. You can make it really circular if you want. Really thick or really thin. It's really simple. And so one thing I wanted to talk about is the eyelashes. Here we have what we usually see as a masculine eye, and then here are feminine eyes. But I just want to make this disclaimer that actually men have more eyelashes than women in general. Just like they have more body hair, they also have more eyelashes. It's just culturally we correlate eyelashes with femininity, like being feminine. And okay, yeah, we'll just add this concept to our art, because I mean, imagine if I made men like this, it would be a little odd. So yeah, we followed the concept we have culturally, but keep in mind that's not how real life works sometimes. So what did you think of this first part? If you wanna see the files of this video, just check the link in the description. They're free, it's for reference. I hope you really liked it and that you learned a lot. Let me know what are your questions. I will answer all of the comments. I hope you have a wonderful day and bye bye!